He wasn't meant to feel anything anymore, not the weight of the sheets, not the air in his lungs, not even the quiet pull of a final goodbye. And yet when the dog touched him, something inside that still broken body refused to stay silent. The room was dim-washed in that pale hospital light that makes everything look already halfway gone. Monitors whispered in slow, steady beeps, like a clock counting down a life no one expected to keep. Ethan Cole lay motionless beneath the thin white blanket, his skin cool, his breathing shallow, the kind of stillness that makes people speak in softer voices, even when no one asks them to. The doctor stood at the side of the bed, calm, practiced, one hand resting lightly near the foreline, the other holding a syringe, not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. A nurse adjusted the drip, her eyes careful, her movements quieter than necessary, because everyone in the room understood this wasn't a moment for noise, it was a moment for letting go. The air carried that sterile scent of antiseptic and something heavier, something like endings, the kind you don't argue with anymore. Near the doorway, a pair of boots paused, then stepped forward, slow, deliberate, each step echoing faintly against the polished tile. A German shepherd moved into the room, his coat dark along the spine, fading into warm sable at the sides, his frame lean but steady, his amber eyes alert, not wild, not confused, just focused, as if he had been here before, as if he knew exactly what this moment was supposed to be and refused to accept it. Rex, no one had to say his name out loud. The way he moved made it clear this wasn't just a dog visiting a patient, this was a partner returning to his post. The nurse hesitated for a second, then stepped aside. Something about the dog made people do that. Without thinking, Rex approached the bed slowly, his nails barely making a sound against the floor, his head low, his ears slightly back, not in fear, but in something deeper, something like recognition. He stopped beside Ethan, and for a moment he just stood there, breathing in the faint scent that still lingered beneath the hospital air, the scent of his marine, the scent of dust and steel and sun-baked roads long gone. And then, without a command, without permission, Rex lifted himself up, placing his front paws gently against the side of the bed, and leaned in, pressing his body close, wrapping himself around Ethan's chest in a quiet, careful embrace, as if he was afraid that too much force might break what little remained. The room shifted. The doctor paused, the nurse froze, someone near the back let out a breath they didn't realize they were holding, because this wasn't protocol, this wasn't routine, this was something else. Rex's head rested against Ethan's shoulder, his muzzle brushing the edge of the man's neck, his breathing slow, steady, grounding. And then it happened, not a movement anyone expected, not something you could explain away. As reflex, a single tear slipped from the corner of Ethan's closed eye, tracing a thin line down toward his temple. The monitor didn't spike, it didn't scream, it just changed slightly enough for the doctor's gaze to sharpen, for the rhythm to feel less like an ending and more like a question. Rex stilled completely, his body tightening just a fraction, as if he felt it too, as if somewhere deep in instinct and memory he understood that this wasn't over. Not yet. The syringe remained in the doctor's hand, untouched, the room suspended between decision and doubt, the kind of silence that doesn't come from absence, but from something gathering beneath the surface. Rex let out a low sound, not quite a growl, not quite a whine, something deeper, something pulled from a place that doesn't belong to training or commands, but to bond, to memory, to something that refuses to let go. And in that moment, every person in that room felt it, the shift, the crack, and certainty, the smallest opening where something impossible might still find its way through. Before we begin, tell me, where are witching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The tear should not have meant anything. That is what the doctor tells himself as he watches the monitor again, steady but different, not louder, not faster, just no longer fading the way it was a minute ago, the kind of change that does not belong in a room where decisions have already been made. The syringe remains in his hand, but his fingers tighten slightly, no longer as certain as before. The nurse glances at him, waiting for a signal that does not come. Rex does not move, he stays pressed against Ethan, his body curved protectively, his head resting along the line of the man's shoulder, his ears angled back, listening not to the room, but to something closer, something quieter. Ethan's breathing is still shallow, but there is a faint unevenness now, like a rhythm trying to return after being forgotten. The doctor exhales slowly, placing the syringe down on the tray beside him, not discarded, not yet, just paused. He leans closer, eyes scanning the small details that are easy to miss when you believe the ending has already been written. The skin tone, the subtle tension near the jaw, the way the chest rises just a fraction deeper than before. None of it dramatic, none of it enough to call a miracle, but enough to hesitate. and in a place like this, hesitation matters. The nurse steps closer, adjusting a sensor, her brow furrowing as she studies the readings. Dr. Hayes says quietly, the name hanging in the air like a question. He does not answer right away, his attention pulled somewhere else. Rex shifts slightly, not away, but closer, pressing his muzzle along Ethan's neck, as if searching, as if following something invisible to everyone else. His nose brushes the skin, then pauses, then returns again, more deliberate, this time tracing the same narrow path just below the collarbone, a place no one had paid attention to before, a place hidden in plain sight. Rex lets out that same low sound, deeper now, almost insistent, not fear, not panic, but refusal, the kind that does not ask for permission. Dr. Hayes notices the movement, his gaze narrowing. He steps around the bed, slowly, drawn by the dog's focus more than anything else, because trained dogs do not insist without reason, and this one has the posture of something trained beyond obedience, something that has learned to trust instinct over instruction. He leans in closer, following the line of Rex's attention, and for a moment, he sees nothing, just skin pale under the fluorescent light, until the angle shifts, and there it is, faint, almost invisible, a thin line no longer than an inch tucked near the base of the neck, the kind of scar that blends into the body so easily it disappears unless you are looking for it. Dr. Hayes frowns. That is not in the chart. He says more to himself than anyone else. The nurse steps closer, checking the records on the tablet, her fingers moving quickly, her expression tightening as she scrolls. There is no surgical mark listed there, no prior procedure, nothing documented. Rex presses his nose against that exact spot again, firmer this time, his body tense as if urging them to see what he already knows. The monitor gives another soft change, not an alarm, not a warning, just a shift enough to make the silence heavier. Dr. Hayes straightens slightly, his mind moving now no longer in acceptance, but in question. He looks at the nurse, then back at the scar, then at the dog, and something unspoken passes between all three, a recognition that this moment is no longer routine. He reaches for a pen light, his movements precise, controlled, but no longer calm in the same way. This is different. This is investigation. He gently turns Ethan's head just enough to catch the light across the skin, and the scar reveals more depth than it first appeared, not fresh, not recent, but deliberate, not accidental, the kind of mark that suggests something was placed or removed long ago, but never recorded properly. Dr. Hayes inhales slowly, his voice lower, now sharper. We need to recheck everything, he says. The nurse nods, already moving toward the console, her earlier softness replaced with urgency, restrained but real. Rex finally lifts his head just slightly, his eyes locked on the doctor, not pleading, not uncertain, just watching, as if waiting for them to catch up to a truth he has already accepted. And somewhere beneath the hum of machines and the quiet shuffle of movement, Ethan's fingers twitch, barely noticeable, a fraction of motion that could be dismissed by anyone who expects nothing, but not by a dog who has never stopped expecting everything. The light from the penlight lingers on the faint scar, as if it has been waiting for years to be seen, and in that thin line between skin and shadow, something begins to unravel, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet insistence of truth surfacing after being buried too long. Dr. Hayes narrows his eyes, adjusting the angle again, his breath slower, now measured, not because he is calm, but because he is thinking faster than he wants to show. The nurse moves beside him, pulling up older records, archived file scans from months ago, maybe longer. Her fingers hesitate over the screen. There is nothing here, she says softly, no entry, no procedure, no implant, no notation of trauma in that region. Dr. Hayes does not respond immediately, his focus still on Ethan, whose body remains still except for that barely noticeable shift in his breathing, not stronger, not steady, but different, like a door cracked open just enough to let something in. Rex steps back half an inch, then returns, pressing his nose again against the same point, more deliberate now, almost urgent, but never frantic, his tail low, his posture controlled, as if he understands that this moment is fragile and must not be broken by chaos. Dr. Hayes straightens slightly, then looks at the monitor again. The rhythm has changed just enough to make certainty impossible and doubt necessary. He sets the penlight down and reaches for the ultrasound device, his movements precise. The nurse hands it to him. Without a word, the room no longer feels like a place of farewell. It feels like a place that made a decision too soon. The device hums softly as he applies it to Ethan's neck, just above the collarbone, where the scar rests hidden under pale skin. The screen flickers gray and black, shifting shapes, forming patterns that only trained eyes can read. And for a second there is nothing, just noise, just the familiar landscape of tissue and shadow. Then something else appears, a small irregularity, not large, not obvious. But there's something that does not belong. Dr. Hayes leans closer, his jaw tightening. That is not supposed to be there, he says quietly. The nurse leans in beside him, her breath catching slightly as she sees it too. A small, embedded structure, not natural, not part of the body, something left behind or something never documented. The room grows heavier, not with fear, but with realization, the kind that arrives slowly. And then all at once Rex lets out a soft sound, again lower. This time almost like relief, as if the signal he has been sending has finally been received. Dr. Hayes pulls the device away, just for a moment, then returns it to confirm what he is seeing, his voice sharper now. Call for imaging, full scan. Now, we need to know exactly what that is. The nurse nods, already moving, her earlier hesitation gone, replaced with purpose, the kind that comes when a mistake might still be undone. The hallway outside remains quiet, unaware that inside this room a decision is shifting. Ethan's hand twitches again, slightly more this time, not enough to be called movement, but enough to be undeniable. Rex notices immediately, his ears lifting just a fraction, his eyes fixed on Ethan's face, as if waiting for something more, something he refuses to stop believing in. Dr. Hayes steps back for a second, looking at the syringe, still resting untouched on the tray, then at the man in the bed, then at the dog, and in that brief silence, he understands something simple and heavy. This was never the end, it was only a moment that almost became one. He turns back to the nurse, his voice firm. Stop. All end-of-life protocol effective immediately. We are not done here, not even close. And as the machines continue their quiet rhythm, no longer counting down, but holding steady, the room shifts again, not in a hope, not yet, but into something just as powerful, the refusal to let go before the truth is fully seen. The room does not rush, but everything inside it begins to move with purpose, the kind that replaces silence with intent, not loud, not chaotic, just faster beneath the surface, like a tide turning. Without warning, the nurse returns first, pushing a mobile imaging unit into position, its wheels whispering across the polished floor, the soft hum of machinery rising to meet the steady rhythm of the monitor. Dr. Hayes stands at the bedside, his posture no longer resigned, but sharpened, his attention fixed on Ethan, as if seeing him for the first time, not as a patient at the end, but as a question not yet answered. Rex steps back only when the equipment draws close, not out of fear, but out of understanding, his body low, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face, his ears flicking at every sound, every shift, every change. The technician arrives moments later, breath slightly uneven from moving quickly through hallways not meant for urgency. In moments like this, she glances once at the chart, then at Dr. Hayes, then at the dog, and something in her expression shifts. As well, she does not ask questions, she does not need to. The machine powers on, casting a faint glow across the room, a different kind of light, colder, more precise, the kind that does not comfort but reveals. Dr. Hayes gestures toward the scar. Again there, he says, his voice steady but edged with something deeper. Find it. The technician nods, applying the gel carefully, the cool touch against Ethan's skin, drawing no visible reaction. But the monitor responds again, not dramatically, just enough, a subtle rise, a hesitation in the rhythm, like a body remembering how to answer. The probe moves slowly across the surface, tracing the line Rex had chosen long before any of them noticed. The screen flickers, shapes forming clearer, now more defined. The irregularity grows sharper, no longer a suggestion, but a presence, something embedded, something real. The technician leans closer, adjusting the angle, her voice low but certain. There is a foreign object, she says, about half an inch beneath the surface, small but dense. Dr. Hayes exhales through his nose, his mind already moving ahead. How was this missed? He murmurs, not expecting an answer. The nurse scrolls again through older scans, cross-referencing dates, procedures, hospital transfers. Her brow tightens. These images were never taken at this angle, she says, almost to herself. It would not have shown up unless someone was looking directly for it. Rex shifts again, his tail brushing lightly against the floor, his breathing steady, but deeper now, as if something inside him has settled, not completely, but enough to know they are finally seeing what he has been trying to show them. Dr. Hayes straightens, turning toward the nurse. Prepare for immediate consult, he says. We need a surgical team on standby. We do not know what that is, but it does not belong there. The nurse nods, already moving, her voice calm but quick as she relays the call. The room fills with a different kind of energy, not panic, not fear, but Urgency shaped by purpose, the kind that builds quietly until it cannot be ignored. Ethan's fingers move again, this time slightly more pronounced, the smallest curl, then release, not enough to wake, not enough to speak, but enough to confirm that something inside him is responding. Rex notices, instantly stepping forward again, placing his head gently against Ethan's arm, not pressing, not demanding, just present, his eyes soft, but unwavering. Dr. Hayes watches that moment longer than he expects. The connection between them, the unspoken understanding that has guided this entire shift, and for a brief second, he allows himself to consider something he would not normally say out loud. Maybe the dog did not find the problem, maybe he remembered it, maybe this was never instinct alone, but memory buried deeper than charts and records, deeper than anything written down. The technician pulls back from the screen, capturing the final image, the foreign shape, now undeniable, fixed in place where it should not be. Dr. Hayes looks at it once more, then back at Ethan, then at Rex, and the decision forms without hesitation. We are moving forward, he says. No more waiting, no more assumptions. We find out what that is, and we get it out. The words hang in the air, not dramatic, not loud, but absolute. And as the team begins to prepare, as footsteps gather outside the door, as quiet voices replace earlier silence, the room transforms fully, no longer a place of goodbye, but a place where something has been interrupted. Something has been challenged, and somewhere between the steady beeping of machines and the soft breath of a dog who never stopped watching, a life that was almost released begins to hold on just a little tighter. The hallway outside the room fills with quiet movement, not rushed, but steady, the kind that signals a shift from uncertainty to action. Footsteps approach, then pause, then continue, as voices lower themselves into focus. A surgical consult arrives, not with drama, but with precision. A tall woman in dark blue scrubs, her hair pulled back tight, her eyes sharp in the way of someone who has learned to read truth in shadows rather than words. Dr. Lillian Brooks steps inside, her gaze sweeping once across the monitors, the equipment, the chart, and finally resting on Ethan, then briefly on Rex, as if acknowledging, without question, that the dog belongs in this moment. Dr. Hayes meets her halfway, speaking low but direct. We found something embedded here. He gestures toward the neck. The scan is incomplete, but it is not documented, not in any prior record. Dr. Brooks nods, once stepping closer, her hands already gloved, her posture calm but attentive. She studies the imaging display, then leans in toward Ethan, applying gentle pressure near the scar, not enough to disturb, just enough to understand the structure beneath the skin. Her brow tightens slightly. There is a casing, she says, not surgical standard, not hospital grade, something else, something older, perhaps field placed or removed improperly. The nurse looks up. Field placed, she repeats softly. Dr. Hayes exhales. He served overseas, multiple deployments. Records show trauma, but nothing specific here, nothing about an implant or retained device. Rex shifts again, stepping closer, but not interfering, his eyes fixed on Dr. Brooks now, as if measuring her, as if deciding whether she understands what he already knows. Dr. Brooks glances at him briefly, then back to Ethan. There are cases, she says quietly, where emergency measures are taken outside of standard reporting, temporary stabilization devices, tracking nodes, experimental monitors. Sometimes they are removed, sometimes they are not, and sometimes they are forgotten. The room stills again, not in fear but in realization that what lies beneath Ethan's skin may not be an accident, but something left behind by necessity or oversight years ago. Dr. Hayes crosses his arms, thinking, if it has been there this long, why now? Why is it affecting him now? Dr. Brooks studies the scan again, then answers slowly, because something changed. Either the device degraded, or it shifted position, or his body is no longer tolerating it the same way. She looks back at Ethan, her voice firmer now. If it is interfering with neural or vascular pathways, even slightly, it could explain the decline, the unresponsiveness, the sudden progression that did not follow expected patterns. Rex lets out a soft breath, his body easing just a fraction, as if each word confirms something he has been holding on to long before anyone else could see it. The nurse glances at the monitor again, the rhythm still fragile, but no longer fading. It is holding, and that alone changes everything. Dr. Hayes nods, once, then looks at Dr. Brooks. Can it be removed? She does not answer immediately. Instead, she studies Ethan again, then the scan, then the placement. Her silence, not hesitation, but calculation, the kind that weighs risk against possibility. Finally, she speaks, yes, but not here, not like this. We need full imaging, surgical suite, and a controlled environment. This is delicate. If that device is near critical pathways, we cannot rush, But we also cannot wait too long. The balance is narrow. The room absorbs her words, each one landing with weight, not fear, not doubt, but gravity, the kind that defines moments that matter. Dr. Hayes turns to the nurse. Prepare for transfer, he says. Coordinate with surgical now. We move as soon as the room is ready. The nurse nods, already in motion, her earlier quiet replaced with focused urgency. Rex steps back slightly, giving space, but his gaze never leaves Ethan, his head tilting just enough, as if listening for something deeper than sound. Ethan's fingers move again, this time clearer, a small curl of the hand, then stillness. But it is enough, more than enough. Dr. Brooks notices it immediately, her eyes narrowing, not in concern but in recognition. He is responding, she says quietly. That is not coincidence. Dr. Hayes looks at Rex, then back at Ethan, then at the scar, and for the first time since this began, he allows the thought to form fully. Maybe this was never about chance. Maybe something saw this coming long before they did. Rex lowers his head, gently resting it beside Ethan's arm again, not urgent, not pressing, just present, as always. And in that quiet contact, something steadies, not the room, not the machines, but the moment itself, holding it together just long enough for what comes next to begin. The preparation does not feel like noise, it feels like pressure building beneath. Still water carts move, with controlled precision, metal wheels gliding across the floor. Instruments are checked once, then again. Voices remain low but faster, now clipped into purpose as the surgical team aligns around a decision that no longer belongs to doubt. Ethan is carefully adjusted, the bed rising slightly, the sheets smooth, not for comfort, but for access, every motion deliberate, every second measured. Rex watches all of it, without moving from his place, his body steady, his breathing calm, but deep, his eyes tracking every hand, every shift, every sound, as if he understands that this is the moment everything changes. Dr. Hayes stands near the foot of the bed, reviewing the scan again, committing every detail to memory, while Dr. Brooks speaks quietly with the surgical coordinator, confirming room availability, confirming staff, confirming readiness. There is no room for delay, but no room for error either. The balance sits tight between those two edges. The nurse returns with additional monitoring equipment, attaching leads, checking connections, her hands steady but faster now as the rhythm on the screen continues to hold, not strong, not stable, but present. And that presence is enough to justify everything that is happening. Rex lifts his head slightly as Ethan's breathing changes again, not deeper, not stronger, but more intentional, like something inside him is trying to follow voices it cannot hear. Dr. Brooks notices the shift, her gaze narrowing as she steps closer to the bedside. Ethan, she says softly, not expecting an answer, but offering something familiar, something human. The monitor responds. Again, just a slight rise, a faint irregularity that no longer feels like decline, but resistance. Dr. Hayes looks at her. You see that she nods. Once he is not gone, he is trying to respond. And that changes the window we are working with. It means time is shorter, but it also means we are not too late. Rex moves, then not abruptly, not urgently, but with quiet certainty. He steps closer, placing his head gently against Ethan's chest, his ears angled forward, listening not to the machine, but to something beneath it, something deeper. His tail still, his posture grounded like an anchor in a room that is beginning to move faster around him. A stretcher arrives, the transfer team ready, waiting for instruction. Dr. Brooks gives a single nod, and the room shifts again from preparation to execution. On my count, she says 1, 2, 3, and they move carefully, lifting Ethan, transferring him onto the stretcher with precision, every hand placed exactly where it needs to be. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Rex steps back just enough to allow it, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face, as if memorizing every detail, every breath, every flicker of movement. The straps are secured, not tight, not restrictive, just enough to stabilize the monitors. Are adjusted, portable units attached. The steady beeping continues, now moving with him, no longer tied to the room, but to the man himself. The doors open, the hallway stretches ahead, long, quiet, lit by rows of overhead lights that hum faintly as they pass one by one. The wheels roll forward, smooth, controlled, each turn of motion carrying them deeper into a place where answers wait, where everything ends. Dr. Hayes walks alongside, his gaze fixed on the monitor, while Dr. Brooks leads ahead, clearing the path, her voice calm but firm as she signals the surgical team to prepare. Rex follows, not at the front, not at the back, but beside the stretcher, close enough to remain connected, far enough not to interfere. No one stops him, no one questions it, because by now everyone understands he is part of this, not an observer, but a reason. The elevator doors open with a soft chime, They step inside the space tight, filled with quiet tension. The doors close, sealing them in for a brief, suspended moment between floors between what was decided and what might still change. Rex looks up at Ethan, then back at the closed doors, his body still, his breathing slow, as if he is waiting for something only he can sense. And then just before the elevator begins to move, Ethan's fingers curl again, this time not a reflex, not a twitch, but a small, deliberate motion, as if reaching for something just out of sight, and Rex sees it first, his ears lifting, his body tightening, just slightly, as if the signal has finally come through, clear, unmistakable. And the elevator begins to rise. The elevator hums softly as it rises, each passing floor marked by a quiet chime that feels louder than it should. Inside the confined space, no one speaks. Not because there is nothing to say, but because every word now feels unnecessary. The moment has moved beyond explanation into something else, something held together by timing and trust. The doors open, and the team moves immediately. The corridor ahead, brighter, colder, filled with a sharper light that reflects off stainless steel and polished surfaces. The scent of antiseptic stronger here, cutting through the air with clinical precision. The surgical suite doors swing open, and the transition is seamless. Ethan is guided inside, monitors shifting with him, machines reconnecting without pause, each beep now amplified. In the sterile stillness of the operating room, Dr. Brooks steps forward, taking her place at the head of the team, her voice calm, measured, directing movement with quiet authority. Prep and confirm, she says, and hands move accordingly. Gloves adjusted, instruments aligned, the overhead lights lower into position, casting a focused circle across Ethan's upper body, illuminating the faint scar that changed everything. Rex stops at the threshold, not blocked, not forced back, but held there by an invisible line. He understands instinctively, his body still, his eyes fixed on Ethan, as if distance does not break connection, but deepens it. Dr. Hayes glances once at the dog, then back to the table, his expression unreadable, but no longer uncertain. The final checks begin, vitals steady enough, imaging confirmed, positioning precise. Dr. Brooks leans in closer, studying the area again, her voice softer now, almost to herself. We find it, and we do not rush. The room quiets further, if that is possible, the kind of silence that does not come from absence, but from concentration. The first incision is prepared, not shown, not dramatized, just implied, in the way the team focuses, in the way breath is held collectively, in the way time seems to narrow into a single point of action. The monitor shifts slightly, not dropping, not spiking, just changing enough to remind everyone that this is a living system, responding moment by moment. Dr. Hayes watches it closely, his hand hovering near the controls, ready but waiting. Rex, outside the room, lowers himself slowly to the floor, his front legs stretched forward, his head resting between them, his eyes never leaving the narrow opening through the glass, where he can still see Ethan's outline beneath the lights. His breathing steady, but heavier now, as if he carries something unseen, something shared somewhere deep beneath layers of memory. A fragment begins to surface, not in images, not fully, but in sensation, heat, dust, the low hum of distant machinery. A hand against fur, a voice steady, even under strain. Stay with me, soldier. The words echo faintly, not spoken now, but remembered somewhere beyond conscious thought. The connection runs deeper than time, deeper than place. Inside the operating room, Dr. Brooks pauses, just for a fraction of a second, her eyes narrowing as she sees it clearer. Now the object embedded exactly where the scan suggested, small, metallic, not organic, not part of the body, something left behind, something that never belonged here. She speaks without looking up. We have it, and the room shifts again, not in relief, but in heightened focus, because finding is not the same as resolving. The nurse adjusts the suction, the technician monitors the imaging feedback, every movement controlled, every second accounted for. Dr. Hayes glances at the monitor again, then back at Ethan, and for a moment something almost imperceptible happens. The rhythm steadies, not stronger, not faster, but more consistent, like a signal locking into place. Rex's ears lift outside the room, his head rising slightly, as if he feels the change before it fully appears on any screen. His body tense, but not with fear, with awareness, with recognition, the kind that comes when something lost begins to return. Dr. Brooks continues carefully, her hands steady, her focus absolute. We are almost there, she says quietly, not as reassurance, but as truth. And in that suspended moment between removal and resolution, between what was hidden and what is now revealed, everything holds its breath, waiting for the next shift that will decide whether this was too late or just in time. The Moment stretches thinner than breath as Dr. Brooks steadies her hands, the metallic glint, now fully visible beneath the focused surgical light, not large, not dramatic, but undeniable, a foreign presence where nothing foreign should exist. She exhales slowly, then speaks. We are removing it now, and every person in the room adjusts, not physically, not in position, but in attention, the kind that sharpens everything into a single line of purpose. The monitor hums beside them, its rhythm steady, but fragile, like a signal waiting for confirmation. Dr. Hayes watches closely, his eyes flicking between the display and Ethan's still face, as if trying to read both. At once outside the room, Rex rises slowly from the floor, his body no longer resting, his ears forward, his posture alert, but controlled, as if something inside him has shifted from waiting to knowing. The glass between them reflects the overhead lights, but his gaze does not waver. He sees through it, not with sight, but with something deeper, something carried from years. Beside the same heartbeat inside the operating room, Dr. Brooks makes the final precise movement, the object released from where it has been held hidden for years, unseen, unrecorded, unchallenged. Until now it is lifted free, small, metallic, silent. And yet the moment it leaves the body, the monitor responds, not with alarm, not with chaos, but with a change that no one can ignore. The rhythm strengthens, not dramatically, not suddenly, but undeniably. The intervals smooth, the pattern stabilizes, the kind of shift that cannot be explained away as coincidence. Dr. Hayes leans in closer, his voice low, but edged with certainty. There it is. The nurse glances at the screen, then back at Ethan, her eyes widening just slightly. He is stabilizing, she says. And this time, there is no question in her voice, only recognition. Dr. Brooks does not look up immediately. She completes the motion, secures the area, ensures that nothing has been disturbed beyond what was necessary. Her discipline absolute, even in the presence of something that feels like more than medicine. When she finally steps back, her gaze lifts to the monitor, and she allows herself a single quiet breath. We were in time, she says, not triumphant, not relieved, just aware of how narrow that window truly was. Outside, Rex exhales deeply, his body lowering again, but not fully resting, his tail giving a single slow movement against the floor, as if releasing something he has carried for far too long. His eyes soften, but remain fixed on Ethan through the glass, as if confirming what the machines are now showing inside the room. Dr. Hayes sets the removed object into a sterile container, his expression tightening slightly as he studies it closer. The surface worn, not new, not recent. Whatever it is, it has been there long enough to be forgotten, but not long enough to be harmless. Dr. Brooks joins him, briefly glancing at it, then back at Ethan. We will need to understand where that came from, she says quietly, but not now. Now we let him come back. The words settle into the room, not as instruction, but as permission. The team begins to ease, not stepping away, not disengaging, but transitioning from urgency to watchfulness, the kind that follows a turning point. The overhead lights remain bright, but the tension beneath them begins to loosen, just enough to breathe. The monitor continues its steady rhythm, each beat now clearer, more defined, like a signal, no longer fading but returning. Outside, Rex shifts closer to the door, sitting upright again, his posture calm, his head slightly tilted, as if listening for something beyond the machines, beyond the voices, beyond the room itself. And then it happens, not loud, not sudden, but real. Ethan's hand moves again, this time unmistakable, the fingers curling, then holding, not a reflex, not a flicker, but a response, a presence returning to the surface. Dr. Hayes sees it first, his voice low, but firm. We have movement. The nurse looks up, confirming it with her own eyes, and the room shifts one final time, not into celebration, not into relief, but into something quieter, something deeper, the recognition that this moment does not belong to them alone, that something unseen has carried it this far, and now gently, without demand, without noise, it is giving it back. Morning arrives quietly, not with sunlight bursting through windows, but with a gradual softening of shadows, the kind that makes the world feel less sharp, less final. The machines in the recovery room hum at a lower tone, now no longer holding a fragile line, but maintaining something steadier, something earned. Ethan lies still, but not the same kind of stillness from before. This one carries weight, carries presence, the rise and fall of his chest, more even, now more certain. Dr. Hayes stands near the foot of the bed, reviewing the overnight readings, his expression calmer, but not careless. He has seen moments turn before, but this one feels different, not dramatic, not impossible, just real. Dr. Brooks enters briefly, her steps light, her eyes scanning the monitors. Then Ethan, she gives a small nod, not to anyone in particular, but to the moment itself. He is holding, she says quietly, that is what matters now. Holding Rex is already there. He had not left, not when the doors closed, not when the night stretched long, not when uncertainty still lingered. He lies beside the bed, his body relaxed, but attentive, his head resting close enough to feel the faint warmth that has returned. His ears twitch slightly at every change, every shift, every breath, as if he is still listening for something deeper, something that guided him here in the first place. A nurse adjusts the blanket gently, then steps back, giving space, not out of instruction, but out of understanding. The room no longer belongs to procedure, it belongs to something quieter. Ethan's fingers move again, this time slower, more deliberate, the hand lifting just slightly before settling back down. Not a reflex, not an accident, but a return. Rex sees it instantly, his head lifting, his body rising just enough to lean closer, his nose brushing lightly against Ethan's hand, not pressing, not demanding, just there. And for a moment, nothing else moves, not the nurse, not the doctor, not even the soft hum of the machine seems to matter, because something has crossed a line that cannot be undone. Ethan's eyes shift beneath closed lids, then slowly, carefully, they open, not wide, not fully, just enough to let light in, enough to see shapes, to recognize something familiar. The ceiling first, then the edge of the room, then finally the shape beside him, the outline he knows without needing to think. Rex's tail moves once slow, steady against the floor, his body still, otherwise his eyes locked on Ethan's face, as if waiting for confirmation, not from machines, not from voices, but from him. Ethan's lips part slightly, no words come. Not yet, but the breath changes, deeper, steadier, his gaze focuses more clearly, and when it lands on Rex, something in it settles, not confusion, not fear, recognition. Dr. Hayes steps closer, but says nothing. He does not interrupt, he does not explain, because this moment does not need translation. Ethan's hand lifts again, just a few inches, enough to reach, enough to find the familiar fur beneath his fingers. Rex leans into it gently, closing the distance, the contact soft, simple, but heavier than anything that came before. And in that touch, everything that was uncertain, everything that nearly ended, everything that almost slipped away finds its answer, not in words, not in explanation, but in presence. Time passes slowly after that, not measured in minutes, but in breaths, in small movements, in quiet confirmations. Dr. Brooks pauses at the doorway, watching for a moment before turning away, her work done for now, not forgotten, but complete in the way that matters most. The nurse dims the lights slightly, letting the room rest around them, and no one speaks of miracles, not here, not out loud, but the absence of those words does not make the moment any less real. Rex settles again beside the bed, his head resting close, his breathing calm, his eyes half closed, but still aware, always aware. Ethan's hand remains where it is, fingers curled lightly in fur, not holding on tightly, just enough to stay connected. And as the morning light finally reaches the edge of the window, casting a soft line across the floor, the room becomes still again, not the stillness of endings, but of something restored, something given back quietly, without demand. Some stories do not arrive with answers, they arrive with a second chance. And sometimes that is enough. In this deeply emotional cinematic journey, a dying U.S. Marine lies on the edge of life as doctors prepare to let him go, but everything changes when his loyal German Shepherd K9 refuses to leave his side and senses something no human could see. What follows is one of the most powerful animal stories ever told, where instinct becomes truth and silence reveals what medicine overlooked, as the Marine's K9 discovers a hidden scar that leads to a shocking medical breakthrough. The entire room is forced to stop and question everything they believed about his condition. This unforgettable narrative blends faith, loyalty, and quiet miracles into one of the most gripping animal stories that will stay with you long after it ends. Through tension-filled hospital moments and a race against time, this story shows how a bond between a Marine and his K9 can uncover life-saving truth when all hope seems lost, making it one of the most inspiring animal stories about trust and second chances. As doctors scramble to act on what the dog revealed, the Marine's life hangs in the balance, proving that even in the darkest moments, purpose can still find a way. This is not just a rescue story, but one of those rare animal stories where unseen connection changes fate forever and reminds us that sometimes the ones without a voice understand more than anyone else. If you believe in loyalty beyond words and miracles that come quietly, this is one of those animal stories you cannot forget.